Hello and welcome to Blue Army TV. I'm sitting here after Carlisle have drawn 0-0 at home with Gillingham in what is a game that gives us back-to-back clean sheets. It's 2 games unbeaten. It means that under Mark Hughes' time in charge, we've lost our first 2, then drawn the next 2. So if you're following patterns, that's all I'm saying. The next 2 are going to be our first back-to-back wins, and I think that would make it our 90th game without a back-to-back win if we don't do that. But yeah, look, I feel like both teams are going to feel very hard done by today. Not by referees or by dodgy decisions or by cheating from the other team, but I think both teams will be frustrated with themselves today. I think Gillingham definitely had chances to win. There was a big mistake from Breeze in the first half that really Gillingham should have done better from. They hit the crossbar. And then you've got to think of the many, many chances that went to Matthew Dennis that he just couldn't put away. He could have had a hat-trick today. You know, a slightly more clinical striker gets a hat-trick today, but, you know, what are you expecting from a player who I don't know if he has any professional goals in his entire career? You know, he's a big physical striker, and to be fair, I think he did a lot of things right today. And if you ask any kind of manager, you'll say, well, you know, they'll say I'll be a lot more worried if he wasn't getting into those chances, if he wasn't creating chances for himself, if he wasn't getting into the right areas, which he clearly is. He just wasn't putting them away. You know, he would hit a few with his wrong foot, or, you know, it just wouldn't put enough power into it, or he'd be off target. You know, a header ballooned off into the stands. You know, he had chances, he got into the chances, he got into the right positions for chances, and I think he did a lot right, but he just wasn't clinical, and I just, you know, that's not good enough. Hugo had a chance when he came on, and he didn't take it. And look, I think there were positives today, especially when you think of Davis and Guy coming straight back into the starting 11. I think you could predict the substitutions from, you know, before the match. When you looked at the bench, you saw Jack Ellis and Will Patching on the bench, and you think, well, obviously they're going to come on for Guy and Davis with them, with this being their first full 90 minutes back. Obviously they had that reserve game where I think they played an hour each, but they're not accustomed to 90 minutes of football. They were always going to get taken off, and I think, you know, it's just glad to see them back. It's good to have a proper right back in Davis. You know, one that can pass forward, one that can defend properly. I always remember when we first had him, you know, he was always one of my favourite players earlier on in the season, but his issue is always stopping crosses. He's going to have to get better at that, especially if he's working in a back four. But apart from that, it's good to have him back. It's good to have his defending, his passing, his attacking, his crossing back into the team. Obviously, Callum Guy, team leader, fantastic midfielder. You know, in my opinion, a League One quality midfielder, and clearly somebody who cares about the club because he's been here this long. It was really, really unfortunate when he got not necessarily injured, but was taken ill. And I'm really glad to, you know, it's good to have him back, even if it did come at the expense of Patching, who I think's been one of our better players in that position. But you don't have to play him as a defensive midfielder. I think at times we went to more of a 4-3-3. You know, we changed things a lot this game. I think the initial idea was for a 4-2-3-1 to be the idea, with Bevan on the right instead of as a central striker. It definitely wasn't a strike partnership. With Embleton as the attacking midfielder, I almost feel like you could take Embleton out entirely and play Patching further forward, because naturally he is a number 10. That's what he played in Ireland. That's what he's played his entire career. Even though he's done a fantastic job as a defensive midfielder, that is his natural position. Or you could do what Liam Barton on the Blue Army podcast suggested, when he said that you could have Whelan as the number 10 with Patching behind him with Guy, which at the time I kind of shot down, but now I kind of think it's a good idea. I saw Whelan today. Callum Guy kind of took the job of 2 defensive midfielders, like he's always done, like he's always known to have done, like the fantastic player he is. And some of the passing Whelan got going forward, you know, he was fantastic. I really thought Whelan had a really good game today in a more advanced role than he's used to. So there is the option to play Guy and Patching with maybe Whelan further forward. And yes, you can obviously say that Whelan is more of a defensive midfielder and Patching traditionally has been more of a number 10, so why would you play a 10 at 6 and a 6 at 10? But, it's just nice to have these options when you've got this many good quality midfielders to rotate between. I don't think that's our area of issue today. And obviously when you look at I don't want to sound like Mike Williamson, but look at our XG today. We clearly created the chances for the strikers, and the midfield was good today. It was good to have two fullbacks. It's the two fullbacks that we started the season with. Yes, we're playing a different system. Yes, it's two managers later, but it's nice to have them two starting together again, which was always Paul Simpson's plan coming into this season. Cameron Harper on his preferred left-hand side with Archie Davis on right back, it's just such a nice change to have two natural fullbacks at fullback. But look, I'm gonna mention Breeze's mistake, because I feel like if it was Harry Lewis, I'd be completely slating him for it. They should have scored from that. That should have resulted in a goal for Gillingham. It was I'll give him credit where credit's due. The wind was dodgy and both keepers struggled with it a bit today. But it's a ball that he probably should just be catching. He pushes it down directly in front of him, which is something that Breeze, in my opinion, that's what he's really good at. He's good at punching it away. He's good at punching it wide. He pushed it downwards right in front of him to a Gillingham man who took it first time and probably should have scored. He didn't, thankfully. But look, we've got to be winning them games today. If Gillingham don't take their chances like they didn't, and we got lucky in times today, there was also another one cleared off the line. We need to be winning that game today. We've had the chances to win that game today. We've had some fantastic attacking play. We've put brilliant crosses in the box. I've waited so long to see this many, crosses into the box, this kind of passing into the box into our strikers, which we've been asking for so long. But we just don't have the strikers to put these chances away. And if I was Luke Armstrong, I'd be absolutely fuming looking back at this. He spent 2 years, not quite 2 years, but, from last January to this January, so about a year. He spent a year at Carlisle with no service, and the moment he leaves, the moment we let a proven goal scorer leave, we've got these completely inexperienced strikers, Bevan on loan from Burnley, and Dennis, who are just getting loads of service into the box, are getting what Armstrong would have absolutely thrived from, and they're just spooning chances over the bar. But look, obviously there are things to be positive from today. I think even though Gillingham did have their chances to win, it only really came through our mistakes at the back. And by that I mean a goalkeeping mistake. Apart from that, we defended well, the midfield was great, we just weren't finishing our chances. Now look, Gillingham aren't a fantastic team, they're a very out of form team, but look, since Hughes has come in, it started bad, it got better, it's getting better every game, which is something that I can only be hopeful for, something I can only be kind of optimistic about. Hopefully next week will be his, or Thursday I should say now, hopefully Thursday will be his first win, and hopefully he can just keep the momentum going, keep getting slightly better every single week. We don't have many games left to get better in, but I just, if we can start winning games, I feel like we could go on a bit of a run, because look at the personnel on the pitch today. Embleton, Callum Guy, Whelan, Wern, Terrell Thomas, both fullbacks, the goalkeeper, they're all good players. We've got good players. Apart from the striker position, we've got fantastic players in the squad. We shouldn't be where we are. If we can start winning a few games, if one of our strikers can, let's just say Dennis gets one of them goals today, maybe that gives him a bit of confidence going into the next match. Maybe he does become the answer. Maybe he does become the goal-scoring player that we need. And hopefully we can, get that next week. Maybe Hugo comes back into the team and does well. He's just far too lightweight, in my opinion, Hugo. He gets shrugged off the ball too easily, and he can never seem to put any power on his shots. He scored in the 5-1 loss, which was... yeah. But yeah, it's an odd one today, because it's hard to talk about a 0-0, but there was a lot that happened today. I think the ref was fine. I think, I've complained about referees a lot recently, especially in the last 3 games since Hughes came in, but the referee really didn't give me any issues today. There's obviously a couple of dodgy calls that you think might have been given the other way, but, I'm obviously sitting watching this with blue tinted glasses. I'm never going to be 100% unbiased on refereeing, and in my opinion, he did absolutely fine. I slate refs enough, so if one's okay, I'll give him some plaudits. He did his job. But yeah, let me know what you think. Because I think if we can just keep building on performances like this, we should be fine. Not to mention Morecambe and Tranmere got beat today, so we're now only 3 points away from Morecambe. And I think only 4 away from Tranmere. So we have gained a point. It's a point in the right direction. And if we can win next week and results go our way, all of a sudden we're only 1 point away from safety, and things look all the more possible with the momentum on our side. Let's see how it goes. I'd just like to say as well done to Carlisle yesterday for making that interview free. I think they noticed a lot of the backlash online, a lot coming from myself. And I still disagree with the whole CUTV thing in principle, but making that interview available for anyone to watch was, in my opinion, it was the right thing to do. Even better, you should have put it on YouTube, but I'll take what I can get for now. But yeah, let me know what you think. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and in a bit.